In today's rapidly evolving digital landscape, artificial intelligence is reshaping industries at an unprecedented pace. While the transformation creates opportunities, it also exposes enterprises to sophisticated cyber threats. The identity security landscape is set to undergo a major shift in 2025 as AI accelerates the creation of non human identities or NHIs at an unprecedented scale. In today's episode of Secure by Design, Tim Eades, CEO and co-founder of Anetac, is going to talk about the escalating security challenges posed by AI, the crucial role of non-human identities, and how enterprises can fortify their defenses against emerging threats. Tim, it's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
It's my pleasure, and this is the first time I'm talking to someone from Anetac and talking to you. So I would love to know a bit about the history and the story of the company, since you are the co-founder as well. Talk a bit about when you created the company, what problem you folks saw that needed to be solved that led to the creation of Anetac.
Absolutely. So this is my fourth company as CEO. So we started this one going really deep into customer interviews about particular problems. We talk to banks, talk to shipping companies, talk to telcos, talk to retailers about the type of problem around non-human identities, and talked about how big is it, where's it going, is it getting worse, what do the regulators say about it, why is it so bad, what's the difference between on-premise, ugly and hard, public cloud, just a mess, and then try to understand what are the alternatives, what people had looked at, why people had tried to solve it. And why is it still an open wound? And so that's how we started it. We put some of the band back together again from previous companies and just said, okay, we transcribed these interviews like a court reporter and created a PowerPoint on a Sunday morning, actually during a Liverpool Football Club game, and said, okay, let's go do some fundraising, raise some money from some friends, built the company, and away we go.
And when you're talking about those customer interviews, discussion with customers, what was their exact pain point that you, as you said, which are the things which are still solved?
So it's interesting, right? So non-human identities, let's call them service accounts in one way, shape, or form, is a soft underbelly of an organization. It's largely a hygienic issue. What they find is on-premise is literally ugly and hard. They find service accounts that are 30 years old that are hard-coded into applications, and they have no understanding of the business context of these things or how they're connected to different things. So service account goes to Lambda, goes to GitHub, whatever it may be. So they have no idea of how to disable them. And then the public cloud is just a giant mess. Then you start to wind it forward, and then you wind it forward and you say, what happens here in agentic architectures where the agents are essentially non-human identities themselves, and it's all getting worse. So the trajectory of the problem is horrible, but we also found very clearly that you had to solve on-premise and cloud. If you just solved a cloud solution, that's not really going to meet the customer's requirements. So you had to do both. So that was kind of a hardcore requirement that we got out of those interviews as well.
And if you look at the non-human identity problem, talk a bit about how big a problem it is. And if you can also give some examples, what exactly do we mean here by non-human identity?
Yeah, so non-human identities, non-human accounts basically is essentially a 30 to 40 to 1 ratio from human to non-human, human being the larger number, obviously. But I tell you what's really fun about this problem. This is the best thing about this problem that you go solve. Let's say in cybersecurity today, there's probably 3,000 startups or some ridiculous number. Who would have thought that you could come up with a company and a product and a solution that could solve a consistent problem across the enterprise? So we do it for shipping companies, we do it for airlines, we do it for colleges, we do it for banks, we do it for all of these different types of organizations, and they all have exactly the same problem. Which, if you think about it, I've been in cyber, I'm the old guy, but more than 20 years, say, right? Who would have thought that after all these cybersecurity startups, you could still come out with a problem, a solution that could solve a problem that is that ubiquitous, It doesn't matter whether you're a church, a college, a telco, a large bank, they all have the same problem. And so it's amazing that we've been able to do that. And then the art is when you're in the market that's that big, what do you have to do, right? You have to make the product simple. You have to make it really fast to deploy and really fast to see value. And so that's kind of how we've been addressing the problem. But in answer to your question specifically, the consistent problems that we see, we see obviously legacy protocols like NTLM v1, we see dormant accounts, we see, legacy accounts, hard-coded accounts. It's incredible, but it's really nice. It's really nice when you're building a problem that a solution that everybody has, and that you can deploy it really easy. Most of our customers deploy in minutes. They do an assessment, and it pops a report, and they'll see the size of the problem. They'll see an impact analysis. They'll all be stack ranked on how do they deal with the solution.
When we look at non-human identity, is this, especially security, is it specific to specific industries, or it's about industries which are regulated or very, very sensitive industry like financial? Because non-human identity is stored almost everything, no matter what I do. APIs, tokens, there are a lot of things that even we all use. But when does it become a big problem? What kind of industry does it become a problem for?
We find it's a ubiquitous problem, right? So I think we're at the end of our financial year right now this week, but I think we started the company and launched the company last May. I think we have 13 financial institutions. We have probably 12 health organizations, medical institutions. We have telcos. We have all sorts of organizations, energy organizations, shipping companies, airlines. Like I said, it is really fascinating to see it's an everyone problem, not a someone problem, and that's really pretty an exciting market to be in, to be really honest.
Thank you. Now let's talk about how you folks approach this problem and how is it different from, let's say, what your competitors are doing.
When we did these customer interviews at the beginning, we did 35 of them, and we're talking to these security professionals. One thing that was also consistent, in addition to that you need to solve on-prem and cloud, you also, they spend a lot of money on privileged access management, identity access management solutions, single sign-on solutions. So whether it's a ping or whether it's a CyberArk or it's a Delinea, they spend a lot of money on these control planes, right? And the CISO these days is very sensitive to adding another operational burden, and a control plane is the ultimate burden. So what you got to be able to do is, how do you make the existing investments better, smarter, and more dynamic? And so one of the key elements that we've done is we don't want to pick a fight with a Savient or a Ping or people like that. We want to make them better and smarter by integrating into these solutions like a CyberArk, taking the information that we're seeing. So the thing is, with a service account, a non-human identity, they're a dynamic problem. So you have to have a streaming solution to understand the behavior. You have to understand it over time, otherwise you'll never see it all. And so by having a streaming solution that's with a time series graph and everything else that you can actually see all these behaviors, then you can capture it. And the efficacy of discovery is absolutely critical when it comes to solving a problem. Because if you don't get the efficacy right of discovering the problem and understanding the problem, then you can't make any other recommendations or any other what we call treatment plans into the organization. Because otherwise, you get that thing wrong on the discovery, everything gets blown up. And so what happens is we focus really hard on discovery, really hard on monitoring and understanding the richness of the problem and around that service account, and then feed it into the existing control planes. So the Delineas, the CyberArks, the Saviants, the Pings, the Oktas, the things that people have spent $20 million on or $10 million on
turn
rolling
on
out.
narrator by pressing Windows plus Control plus
They don't
Enter.
want to replace
For
those.
more
They want to make
accessibility
them better.
features,
So we
press
decided
Windows
to focus
plus
on
U,
that and solve
or
the problem
select
for
the
our clients.
accessibility.
What kind of solutions you folks have? Also, we live in an API-driven world, data-driven world. I mean, that's what the new reality is. Of course, I will talk about AI, Gen AI also at some point. But it's cloud, on-prem, hybrid. Talk about your solutions and Are you looking at public cloud, private cloud, on-prem? How does it all work?
Yeah, so our customers very clearly have told us that you need to solve the on-prem and the cloud. If you don't solve both, you don't solve the solution you don't solve the problem that the customer has. These customers are typically regulated, whether it's HIPAA or PCI or some sort of DORA or whatever it may be. So you've got to solve both. But the other thing they say is, make it easy. Make it easy for us to deploy. Make it easy for us to understand the problem. Give us rich understanding of what to do and build these what we call treatment plans. The challenges with these problems that you have in the enterprise today is they're so diverse, right? I mean, we were working with an organization who has these problems where a developer it actually uses their credentials as a service account, right? And they just created thousands of service accounts, completely bypassed the processes. So that's an example of look, you've got dormant accounts, you've got NTLM v1, you've got hybrid accounts, you've got all these different types of things. So what you have to do is make it very simple to discover the problem, make sure the efficacy of discovery is correct, and then fit into the existing control plans. And if you can do that right, and you can do that seamlessly, you reduce the attack surface, you make them get closer to and hopefully meet the compliance frameworks, whether it's MITRE or whatever it may be, and from there they sleep better at night. I mean, I've been in the security industry, like I said, a long time, and I have lots and lots of friends who are CISOs. They give us very clear direction on how to build this company, and we listen really well.
I mean, when we talk about security, a lot of things have changed in a couple of years, especially with the emergence of the whole cloud native landscape. Security used to be someone else's problem. We were not even dealing with a lot of identity related problem because you buy the software, you install it yourself on your own, data center or your systems with the cloud. How have you seen the whole security landscape, especially if you look at the identity management or access control? It has evolved over time, and are you happy with the state of security?
I think the world of security is being turned upside down by AI, to be really honest. I think AI is bigger than cloud, it's bigger than mobile, it's as big as the internet. I mean, I was talking to my nephew over the weekend over a beer, and I'm like, this is 1988, 1989, and you're going to go walking into the biggest technology revolution you're ever going to see. And I think security is now really being turned upside down. I think the responsibility of the security vendors to transform is just massive because the bad guys are moving faster than ever before. So I think cloud's interesting, and we obviously do it and everything else. There's a shared responsibility model, but there isn't a person in the world that doesn't wake up every day right now thinking like, hey, how can we move faster, better embrace technology to better secure the enterprise?
When it comes to securing either enterprise or if you look at any other even personal lives, we all want security, but the thing is what we do about it. We would love to have, and sometimes it is less about, because tools are available, technologies are available, there are companies, and security is, first of all, very busy, very crowded, and also kind of sticky market. Once you move with a vendor, you stick with a vendor kind of thingy. Culture plays a much bigger role there, because if you don't have the right culture within your organization, none of these tools are going to matter. So when it comes to non-human identity, or when you look at just in a text market, how much importance do you folks put on culture, and what do you do? Because sometimes right tools can become a catalyst to bring the cultural change within organization. So how do you look at culture, and how do you kind of empower your customers, users, to bring the cultural changes that are needed for best security practices?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the customer centricity is absolutely critical, right? You have to be able to relate to the problem that the customers have and understand that and really get going in that early on. The fact that we built the company after 35 interviews, and it was quite funny, right? As we were building the product and bringing the company product to market, like every day we'd meet with 2 or 3 customers and we'd say, what do you think about it now? And it started off with just PowerPoint, and then like mock-up, and then Figma, and then the real product, and we were iterating it. And so products and companies that are born out of customer centricity tend to have the right culture at its heart. And if you can keep that center of gravity right all the way through. So we've been, here's an example of it. Like I said, we launched the company in May, and by the end of this week, 40% of our customers would have already expanded their initial order. So within 6-7 months of their initial order, 40% have already expanded, which means they like the product, obviously, but it also means it shows the problems that they have. So a combination of customer centricity, specificity on the problem that you're trying to solve, like a deep understanding of that problem, means that you can drive value, they start to enjoy it, they engage with the product, and it starts to expand. And so that's what makes me smile every night when I put my head on the pillow, is like the people that we work with, the people that have helped us get off the ground, are the people that are keeping us straight and focused on that model.
Now, I want to go back to some of the solution and the approaches you have. One is, can you also talk about when it comes to security? Is once again, is companies we are dealing with, continuous. I mean, I'm not talking about real-time data, but data is coming in, people are logging in, signing in. Can you talk about the streaming capabilities that you folks have, and why does it matter?
So, I mean, the world basically is divided into two worlds, right? Static and dynamic, fundamentally, right? But if you don't have a streaming platform, you won't understand the dynamicism that is required to actually to detect and manage the identity vulnerabilities out there and how to actually solve them. Service accounts, non-human identities are behaviors, right? You have to see them for what they are. There's a type of attack called a curve roasting attack, which, without getting too technical, on a single request, you can actually see how these vulnerabilities are taken advantage of. But if you're a static platform, you would never see it. If a service account has its credentials elevated at 2 o'clock in the morning, then reduced at 2:30 in the morning, a static solution would never see it. If the account opens for 1 minute, then goes away, a static solution would never see it. So you've got to see these behaviors. So what we do is we stream it and understand its chain, if you will. So these things, this account talks to this application that goes to Lambda, which goes to GitHub. You see the multi-hop, you understand that over time. So then you see all these changes, and only by understanding those changes can you really actually protect the enterprise. So that's what we do, and it's fascinating, right? Because we see all these things all the time. We have a fabulous customer success team led by this gentleman called David Harper, and we constantly show customers, the soft underbelly of these vulnerabilities that we're discovering dynamically, and help them with these treatment plans to solve it.
You also earlier mentioned AI. When we look at AI, I always look at two different lenses. One is the AI agents, how they might make, or they're already making attacks more sophisticated. And then you folks can also leverage AI to combat that attack. So how do you look at AI agents in terms of non-human identity space?
Yeah, it's obviously it is the topic of it will be the topic for the next 5, 10 years, maybe 15 years. I think AI makes the good hacker great and the great hacker scale. So I think it's creating more attacks, more sophisticated attacks, more broad attacks than ever before. I think that challenge is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and harder to detect, harder to manage. What's interesting on the other side of the coin, as an entrepreneur startup dude, who's a little bit long in the tooth, it's super fun, right? Because it makes it never been cheaper to build a startup than ever before, right? You can build agentic architectures to do baselining, to do reporting, to do policy manipulation, all these different types of things. So it's never been cheaper to build a cybersecurity company. It's never been cheaper to get them to market. But you've got to train these in the right way, and it's going to create an opportunity to transform the security industry. It's a great opportunity from an entrepreneur to displace the legacy vendors, but at the same time, you've got to stay on it because it's moving very fast, and the challenge is here is like the attackers are moving so fast. We can only innovate at our speed, But the challenge is, how can the enterprises even adopt the technology to actually protect themselves? So, it's an interesting opportunity. It does get you a little bit worried about some of the older, slower moving companies that have a hard time to adopt newer technologies. So, but that's why we're here, right? Trying to make the world a better place, trying to make the world a safer place.
Very well said. And as you also mentioned, I think when it comes to bad guys versus good guys, and it comes to security, that the big challenge is that as good guys, you have to be right 101% of the time. Bad guy has to be right only once. So
Exactly.
it's like it's not even even playing a field between cat and mouse. It's challenge. Also, security is not a destination. It's not a product. It's a process.
Yeah.
It's a journey, and things will keep evolving with period of time. What advice do you have for organizations to look at security not as a product? It's not, or as a destination. Build the right processes, and as you also mentioned that you will continue to talk about AI for a long time to come. At the same time, I especially work in the open source space. New technologies keep coming in, and now as an organization, you don't want to be left behind, so you want to keep dipping your toes in the latest technologies. At the same time, you also want to make sure that things that you're running are stable and secure. So talk about how companies should build the right culture. So when it comes to non-human identity or other security related problem, they should be able to maintain the balance. They should not freak out when something new is coming up because they were not prepared, or they should not just put all of their eggs in the same basket. They have nothing secure and stable.
Yeah, that is a great question. It's a great question. Well, there's so many parts to answer that question. I will give you probably the top 3 or 4. Number one, I would partner with the ISAC organizations, the National Health ISAC, people like Errol Wise, who's done an amazing job over there federating the wisdom of the crowd. Same as the FS ISAC. Work with the ISAC organizations. They are doing their very best to understand the emerging models. The second one is, create a culture of curiosity, where you can break up part of your team or part of your days to invest in education and learning, and make sure you have a trusted person on your team to go to the right conferences, read the right things, get educated in the right environments to make them, see around corners as best as they can. And then part of that would be, I know I'm biased, but I'm an investor in many different cybersecurity companies, on the board of 2 or 3. Part of that second one would be, as the 1 or 2 members of the team go out and learn at Stanford or wherever it may be, at meetups, about the next generation architectures, meet younger companies, create an environment of testing and understanding new technologies. I tell you who was the best at this back in the day. E-Trade were famous when Kurt Smith was there, and a gentleman called Q Quark were brilliant and really adopting and understanding new technologies. They were always the early adopter. So they were always the go-to people over the last 15 years. You got a Q, or you got a Kurt, who's Q's boss, and you created this culture of smart people learning and seeing around corners to adopt a new technology. I think that's the top 2. Would be create a culture of curiosity, and learn and embrace new tech, but go to meetups and learn and create a good reading list, and also go to embrace the ISACs. Because people like Errol Wise is a superstar, and the FSIs that people have been fantastic for years. They are now sharing really smart things, and they will help you not learn alone. And the wisdom of the crowd is going to be super important in this battle.
Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. Talk about the company, talk about this whole problem area when it comes to non-human identity. Thanks for great insights, and I love chatting with you, and I would love to have you folks back on the show. But I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah, we would love to come back. Absolutely great talking to you.